it is a new year.
Happy
2019.
New Year.
Happy New Year to everybody watching.
Oh, yeah.
Another episode of FTMIG live on the Midas Letter Network.
It's 2018.
It's 2019. Yeah, I did a tweet today. If anyone follows our FTM investment Twitter account, I said it's the first new trading day of 2018. That was incorrect. That was not true. It is 2019.
Got your back, bro.
This is for sure.
Yeah. I know
So-
what I would do if it was 2018.
How was your holidays,
beginning?
man?
Ooh. How were my holidays? My holidays were very good. You know, it was nice. Get to relax. Get to rethink what we're going to be doing in 2019 with our company, with the show, with our portfolios, especially portfolios, because that was a rough year.
Right. For some people.
For some people, other people, if you're a trader out there, you know, there's stuff to be made. But really quickly though, for today, if you want to switch over to here, we've got Michael Rowley, CEO of Group 10 Metals. We had an interview with him. He's going to be showing, recapping 2018. We had Melinda Rombouts, CEO of Evenco. Had a nice interview with her as well, going over, again, 2018 and what she expects her company to be doing in 2019. We have Greg Johnson, CEO of Metallic Minerals, also going to be coming on here to recap his year. And of course, Johnny Mack is breaking down the TA. He's fantastic if you haven't seen him before. He's doing Aurora, Hexo, and Wayland. They were the three top picked in our poll we do weekly in our Follow the Money Investor Group Facebook group.
It's a lot of pointing you just did.
I did, yeah.
He was yelling, too. How was your
I'm not yelling, that's just the way I
My
talk.
holiday was good, man, except for I work in a restaurant, so I don't really get much time off.
Yeah.
I had a nice little, 13 hours work day on New Year's Eve, so I rung it in with all my coworkers.
Very nice.
Yeah, not fun.
It's a double time, man. I love it though, because you're sticking to your day job at the same time. You probably put at least 30 hours into Follow the Money and into your portfolio. So it's a lot of work, man. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Proves you can have a career and still invest intelligently at the same time.
Boom.
Proof right here. Boom.
Yeah.
So we are doing a quick segment, guys. This is what we're doing to start off. It's called "What is the biggest surprise and or disappointment of 2018?" We know you all have it, so get on that message board. If you've got something, comment. We might talk about it as well. But Greg, what was your biggest surprise and or disappointment?
Okay, so besides your seagull shirt, my biggest, I guess it's a culmination of both.
Yeah.
It's both, because it was pretty much the TSX venture as a whole was very surprising and a big disappointment at the same time. With the TA, Johnny Mack, what he was doing, he actually, do we have that here with the NDI?
With the TA of the, yes we do.
Come on now.
I know, I'm going back to it.
That's all right, he's not prepared. But he showed it pretty well. Like, he talked about how badly it was doing and like how you should look at it. And I look at my portfolio and I look at all the stocks that I have and how many I have that are in the venture, and I'm like, well, that's not good at all.
Yeah, no, I can believe it. And if we can get my NDI up really quickly, I want to show people something. This is the basically about 11 years of the TSX venture. It's really interesting to see. If you just follow this cursor over here, this precipitous drop at the very beginning is 2008. That's the 2008 financial crisis, and then we had a really nice segue going into probably 2011 or so. It's really interesting to see that we weren't really talking about this, were we? In 2016, we were well below where our crash was in 2008.
Yep.
And since then, Karl, you pointed out that we've almost got a double bottom here. If you're looking at a really, really long time frame. We've set a lower or higher low when it comes to what we've just bounced off, and we've had a little bit of a bounce here.
Well, we're hoping that it was.
Correct. We don't know yet, and that's what this year is really important. Will it continue? So that's a huge disappointment for yourself and surprise that the venture did that. Karl, what's your biggest disappointment surprise? I can only guess it.
Well, first of all, nobody asked me how my holidays were.
Oh, how are your holidays?
But anyway, we'll just, who cares about Karl, right? And I think that question, I think the surprises and disappointments kind of go hand in hand. I think for me, the venture was one of them because it did affect my Garibaldi. But I'll start with Matica. Matica was definitely a disappointment. Going back to basically a year ago, you know, I know I was touching base with the management and all that, and it just definitely seems like they didn't take advantage of the opportunity that still was there for cannabis, and because they didn't execute, you know, with their facility on time. I mean, the facility seemed to be decent, or actually good. Like, it was, you were there, right? It was a good facility.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the right team. They didn't have David Hyde's team on there to help with the security, and you know, they had to go fix a bunch of stuff, and it took so long to end up you know, getting things figured out. By the time they got their license, the sector had already pulled back and had a significant consolidation phase. So that was a big disappointment. And actually, one thing I remember highlighting was right after that facility, they thought their facility was done. I think, you know, the management team was taking vacations and stuff, and it's just like, no, like, yeah. Anyway, so they did not execute, and that was a disappointment. Garibaldi was a disappointment, for sure. The venture, so, you know, and some of those are surprising. One of them maybe not. Yeah. But I think what was surprising is to hear about Green Growth Brands, right? Remember, it was like around last September. It was like the end of last summer. Yeah. And we were told about it from a friend of ours, and we started researching it, and it was like, wow, you know, like a lot of the money, even the sentiment around Bay Street here was that a lot of the money was going to go into U.S. cannabis plays. So I was starting to really figure it out, like, you know what, I got to move my money and get involved into the U.S. side, yeah. And wasn't able to get into that company on an IPO at all, or and even when it IPO'd, I waited because the market was not really there, right? So came back, took a position, and surprisingly, really happy to own that cannabis play. Yep. Like, there's a lot of upside there, and that's how I see it as an investor.
Very nice.
Not advice.
Not advice, not advice.
What about yourself?
My biggest surprise is also my biggest disappointment, and that is the share price of Wayland Group. And here's why. I think the biggest disappointment is that I've looked into the company, I've spoken to their management team on numerous different occasions. I see what they're doing throughout the world, really. They're in so many different countries. Their facility, I've been there, I've met their builder. I did not expect it to go sub $1. And solely based off the share price action, it was my biggest disappointment, because it's a big part of my portfolio I'm still holding because I still believe in the company. I'm expecting a much bigger 2019, but I was shocked that it was going to go that low after all the different elements it has going for it. I was really shocked by that. So that was my biggest disappointment and surprise of 2019. 18.
Now, so I gave Matica, like I sort of explained why, you know, management didn't execute. So why did Wayland's stock price go? Why was the momentum such a downward?
It was absolutely the TSN turning point of their share price was the two insiders selling. 1,000%. The two insiders sold, and that came out in a Globe and Mail article. They leaked it to the Globe and Mail, someone with knowledge of that. Then their big deal, they had a bought deal. I can't recall the exact amount, but it was around $4. It was a massive deal. That was then thrown out. Everyone was giving their money back, and that actually began this downfall, or this spin of things happening for them. So, you know, there were reasons why the share price went down, but if you look at what their market cap is and look what they have, those two things don't match up. I think there's a lot of upside there. Personally, again, just like you, not advice.
Yeah, no, and we're not bashing companies here. We're like, you know, you're a big fan of Wayland.
Absolutely.
And yeah, a lot of people look at their assets and think, why is it down here? Yeah. You know, and the whole insider trading thing, I think they're past that. Really, I don't think that was actually, I kind of disagree with you. I know that maybe 12 months ago, I think is when that story hit, but you know, I really think the issue there was who got in on the financings. Yeah. And who got that paper, and they covered their shorts. I think it happened a couple times. So, but
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Yeah. But hey, it is what it is. So, you know, we're gonna keep it real. FTMIG.
Absolutely. And keep it real, because 30 Mil says Karl's bringing the funk. So keeping it real. And I agree. One of the bigger surprises, if not the biggest, was the passing of the Farm Bill. I'm specifically bringing that up in our next segment, coming up later in the show, of what's trending, because I have an article that came out, I think yesterday or today, I want to share. We'll do that at that time. But first, we're going to our first guest, and that is Michael Rowley of Group 10 Metals. We got to sit down with him and go over a recap of what they've been doing on all their different properties. We'll turn to that now. And speaking of different land packages, actually moving over to Michael Rowley, CEO of Group 10 Metals. Not only are you in Ontario and Yukon as well, but you're also in Montana. Can you speak a little bit about what you've been able to accomplish in 2018 for your company?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. 2018, of course, our first year on the ground at our flagship Stillwater West project. We only started the acquisition last year in 2017. Completed the acquisition this year, brought together an enormous database, including over 28,000 meters of core and some terrific geophysics and survey work. We're still compiling that, and that is guiding our efforts. 2018 was our first season on the ground. Exciting year, lots of good results to follow. We did prospecting programs, a lot of data compilation effort, and began, most importantly, the modeling of the 28,000 meters of core in the database, including almost 12,000 meters of core in our possession, which we've now relogged and, where necessary, reassayed. And the key point there is that we're the first ones to bring in this bushveld model, this Platte Reef model from the northern limb of the bushveld, South Africa. So we've not only brought together the database and the team and the land position, but we're applying this new thinking, which is part of the Metallic Group's MO, if you will, in terms of how we advance these brownfields assets. So the potential that we see here is for the 100 million ounce Platte Reef style mineralization in the basal zones at Stillwater. What's remarkable about the opportunity is that hasn't really been looked at before, despite the similarities between the Bushveld and the Stillwater complexes. So 2018, an exciting year. We look forward to reporting the results from those programs. Some of the assays are in now. We're just now compiling them into the model, and news flow will be ongoing in the first weeks and months of 2019.
Now, for investors who aren't familiar with the Platte Reef style of mineralization what's the significance of that compared to other different variances that you would find when exploring?
Sure. The Platte Reef is a relatively recent discovery as a district in the iconic Bushveld complex of South Africa. The parallels between Stillwater and Bushveld are well known, and in fact, their development timelines are similar. Both had high-grade reef discoveries in the 20s through 1970s, and the development of those reefs to some degree eclipsed any other developments. And then in the 1990s in the Bushveld, you get the discovery of these larger lengths of disseminated mineralization in the Platte Reef district, which led to the development of Anglo-American's Mohalaquina mine, for example, which is a 200 and something million ounce PGE nickel copper producer, very economic operation. Adjoining that, you've got Ivanhoe's Platte Reef project, which is now in development by Ivanhoe. That potential has never been developed in the Stillwater complex, despite the known parallels between the two camps. And we have every indication of the data for that potential at Stillwater, and that has become our focus for development there.
And you recently had a news release come out speaking about a new zone. You call it the hybrid zone. And the reason for that is because it's a hybrid. There's many different metals that you are currently focusing on. When it comes to Stillwater, what commodities are you focused on, and which ones define your company?
Sure. The hybrid zone is within the Chrome Mountain target area, and that, in broad terms, fits within the bulk mineable targets that we're terming Platte Reef style. Being those 8 large target areas identified across the basal zone. We, in addition, have 6 high-grade reef-style targets, which is more conventional for the district. And when we say high-grade, we mean high-grade platinum group elements. The camp, of course, is known for the highest-grade palladium platinum mines in the world, with over 90 million ounces of past production and current reserves resources, which is staggering, actually, at half an ounce per ton. In terms of target metals, we have the platinum group metals, palladium and platinum. However, in the basal zones, there are also historic mines for nickel, copper, and chrome. And we're seeing significant potential for cobalt, vanadium, rhodium, and other elements as well that we'll be reporting on in 2019.
Now, Group 10 metals is newer in exploration than metallic minerals is. When it comes to 2019, what can investors be excited for and expect for different exploration programs, or just in general, where Group 10 metals will be taking itself as of the new year?
Well, we'll be at the trade shows in January and March. We invite your audience to come out and see us there. We'll have some of our best core on display. We'll be glad to show that off. Key events, I think, the results of the assays that we mentioned. I think the most engaging thing is going to be the results of the core modeling work that we've been doing, as we're the first ones to add that up in the context of this 25-kilometer wide property and the stratigraphy there, as we draw these parallels with the Bushveld and add this up for the first time in terms of where we are in the system and where we see potential for these very large polymetallic mines, deposits.
So, Michael, if you don't mind, some people, they actually don't know that the Stillwater District is actually one of, if not the highest grade production of palladium in the world. How is Group 10 looking at that? And is it a big focus for you for next year?
Good question. Yeah, the Stillwater District is renowned for its palladium riches. It is half an ounce per ton, staggering grade. 10 million ounces past production plus 80 million ounces still in the ground in the JM Reef deposit. And that's open. That's just simply where they stopped drilling. It's a staggering wealth. Sibanye-Stillwater, of course, bought those mines in 2017 for $2.2 billion as we were making the acquisition there. And that, we're above them and below them in stratigraphy of the system there. So it's very relevant to us. It speaks to the metal riches of the camp and the district. And that is the highest grade platinum palladium mine of any size in the world, and certainly outside of South Africa and Russia. It's a fantastic wealth. We certainly have palladium on our ground, and past explorers have focused on that. We have extended the basket to include the technology metals as well, plus some other ones. But as we discussed, it is a polymetallic system, and they occur together there. So what is currently happening in the palladium markets, with palladium rivaling gold as the most valuable precious metal, is very much of interest to us, and makes us one of very few options for investors looking for exposure to the palladium space.
Absolutely. And when it comes, again, back to an investor as well, if someone was to ask you why invest in Group 10 metals, what really stands out to you as something that's a differentiator and a possible fit for somebody that'll have the potential of appreciation in the near future?
Predictably, I see lots of upside. Seasonal for one thing, but it's our stage in our development on this project, right? We've just put this together. We've brought together a world-class team that includes Dr. Craig Bowe, who was underground at Stillwater in the 70s, and then Dr. David Broughton from Ivanhoe, who's a world-class expert on these bushveld systems, this hybrid zone mineralization. You add to that the database that we have and the news flow and the work that we're planning for 2019, I think we're at a very exciting stage on this project with a lot to reveal as we build it out over the next couple of years.
Well, I appreciate very much for you taking the time to allow investors to know a little bit more about your company and really speaking about Group 10 metals and what's in store for 2019 as well. And we are back. Thank you, Michael, for going through that. It's really interesting because we've been talking about this for a while. The metals and precious metals and exploration have been pounded. This goes along with what you were talking before, that how the venture was such a disappointment to you. they really have been pounded for a long time, and there are a lot of investors who are looking at this and thinking, you know, this could be potentially a very big year for precious metals and into these different exploration companies. So I appreciate that very much for going through the overview of your company. More to come on them in the coming weeks.
And they are a client.
Absolutely.
Well, let's remind people.
Yeah, and I've learned more from Michael and Greg about the mining industry than anyone else I've been talking to over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
really knowledgeable.
When we started talking to them, it was obvious that, you know, they have such experience in that space and top-notch management. And it's really cool that we have that dialogue with them. We're like, hey, you know, like email us with any questions you have, and it doesn't just have to be related to our company. If you guys want our opinions on whatever, we'll give you an objective opinion. And it's great.
No, I love it.
Fantastic.
So, hopping into another segment of ours, which is what's trending. Because a lot of the time, we spend so much time on social media, and people, I mean, anyone who's watching this right now, you're watching us on social media, you get it. But the amount of people who don't fully understand just how many investors and news is circulating on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, whatever it be. So that's what we focus on. And there were a couple things that stood out. Greg, the CPTPP. That's TPP. It's hard. It's a lot harder to say than the TPP.
I learned this morning you can also call it TPP-11.
TPP-11. Okay, that's easier. That's less of a tongue twister.
It was 12, but we know why now.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So I don't know if people have been paying attention to this actually or not. The TPP, the Trans-Pacific
Partnership.
A partnership that's been going on for years. But then when Trump came into office, one of the first things he did was say we're backing out of this. Well, the reason why you just said it used to be TPP 12, but now it's TPP 11 is because this was just passed. It's going to cover over 13% of all global trade. I think I saw something about like 18,000 tariffs.
Yeah,
we're going to be removed of this.
Removed and changed.
The United States is not a part of it.
Yeah.
That's actually really, really big, and no one's really talking about it other than these headlines are going. So that's been trending, but I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. Is this negative for the states? Like
Well, it's Trump, right? He ran on this. This is one of the things he said he didn't like, and one of the things he changed right away. Two things: they can always join the TPP. There is an option, TPP 11.
Yep.
But also they're trying to negotiate their own deals, which is again a Trump thing, that they want to negotiate with these all these other countries, right? But negotiations take a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wonder if it'll help him for a re-elect or not, because it doesn't seem like certain things are going to get done. But for Canada, Japanese cars, I think there's a tariff there on Japanese cars where you'll potentially have 6% coming back.
Yeah.
So maybe it gives you a little leverage when you go to buy a car, a Japanese car.
Yeah.
There was a canola oil thing that affected. There's a lot of moving parts to this. I was telling you earlier.
Yeah,
there was a 39%.
Huge.
There was a 39% tariff on something canola oil related.
Yeah.
And so many other areas, right? It's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's significant. It's about what we do with this down the road.
Well, I think the biggest obstacle, this is why we bring it up on the show as well, is because I think this has a direct correlation with markets. Because one of the things that really helped pour gasoline on the fire of last year and everything tanking was the tariffs between China and the United States. Those are obviously the two largest economies going at one another. Well, this is 11 different countries coming together and opening up their gates that there is more trade. So this is the exact opposite of that. You got to wonder if that's going to have that mental effect of, okay, we're getting a little bit better here. And then still trending as well over the weekend, Trump was tweeting out saying that he had great talks with China, looking over getting a trade deal with them as well. If they get that trade deal, that is big just for markets, because that's what's been holding us down so much. So you got to look at these things. You got to look at the macro things when you're trying to. If you're just looking at cannabis or just mining or just tech.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times he's tweeted about not having a good talk with China or a good talk with China and watching the markets move. He literally can move markets with his tweets, and so
it is pretty crazy to watch. Wow.
And that's why the companies out there that say, "Hey, you know, we're not going to really worry too much about social media presence."
Yeah.
Social
media is important.
Not going anywhere.
What else was trending? Speaking of social media, I think what was trending more than anything was Afria and Green Growth Brands.
As of late, yeah.
As of late. You can
Yeah.
hate it, you can love it, you can call it a scam, you can call it the best thing you've ever seen in your life. We don't care about that. We're simply saying it was trending and trending hard.
And the Farm Bill.
And the Farm Bill, both cannabis related. Aphria and GGB, why was that trending? Why is it so important?
Well, Aphria's share price just got hammered. And, you know, that company was very vulnerable, right? Because they do have Canadian assets, regardless of what you think of what they paid for their European assets or South American assets. They still have good Canadian assets, and they have those supply deals, and, you know, so they have good operations there. And I'm not surprised that a company came in and made a hostile bid. Probably one of a few, you would think. And probably going to be another one from Green Growth Brands, right?
Yeah.
But I think it really depends on what the sector does in the next month or so, right? I mean, if the sector starts to take off and valuations start to move, that could change things. But if you stay in this consolidation phase in your Aphria, you still don't have a corporate response from your, from Vic, right? That was kind of, God, that reminded me of like mishandling a mining news release. It's like you created some sort of an expectation that you didn't meet, right? That's not good. So they didn't manage that expectation. They didn't give a line-by-line report back. Then you have this, a little bit of a distraction. And some people think that, this was just a PR stunt from GGB, which is speculation. But listen, what are those people very, very good at? What are they really good at?
Yeah.
What are those people really good at?
Retail.
No.
PR.
Marketing and branding,
Well,
right? So at the end of the day, we're talking about them. I like them anyway, but I don't think it is just a PR stunt. I think these are the type of people that can pick up the phone and raise money, even at a higher valuation, if they can justify it to their friends or whoever, right? So I think that this is sort of the real deal, and you don't go in with your first offer and just max out, right? Yeah. So it's a bargaining chip.
Yeah, it'll be really, really interesting to. I think we're going to be talking about this for at least the first quarter of 2019, because there's so many different elements that are going around this. We've spoken about GGB and their management team before. I think there's definitely something there, but it's also interesting. There's connections between Vic and Aphria and these other elements, so there's lots of questions out there. I know Peter did a good job of jumping on a Q&A right away, and it was answering all these different questions that are coming at him. So good on him for that, because that's what you should be doing if there's any type of even negative or whatever it be in the marketplace. But
well, that news release they had, was it not yesterday, Monday?
Yep.
They had a news release. They were just outlining certain things. They were talking about it. That was their way of having dialogue with investors and helping with the sentiment. I mean, it was a good news release. Yeah. And of course, people are going to talk, and that's fine. But people are talking. Yeah. And things are going to go on.
Exactly what you want.
Things are going on behind the scenes, right?
But just like the people in our chat rooms and the people we talk to, I still want to see that line-by-line rebuttal.
Let's get serious. If you're an Aphria shareholder and you start digging in to GGB and their management and the type of potential revenues that they can bring in the U.S. market, right? I understand you just got hammered. I get it. But look, at the end of the day, that happened. There was some issues there, right? So the market said, you guys are coming down. And that report came out, and now you're vulnerable, right? No. Would you not want some sort of partnership? I'm not suggesting that maybe you want this, this $11 per share, whatever that would make their valuation. Maybe you want something higher. Yeah. But you don't want exposure to the upside to GGB and their team in the U.S. market?
I've actually seen a couple of comments talking specifically about that Aphria's got a lot going on with its name right now, rightfully so. Oh, yeah. And they're looking over at GGB, and someone said, I saw a comment saying GGB is a scam. I'm like, then how did they get 7 licenses in Nevada when their team of management were able to have over $150 million in taxes alone paid throughout businesses that they've run before?
There's a lot of comments. There's a lot of comments on social media that don't deserve to even be mentioned. That might have been one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, full disclosure, I own the stock. I'm bullish on it.
Yeah. I own half what I used to, actually. In our chat rooms, I was saying that when it ran, I took half off the table because I'd rather look at half and I'll cheerlead my other half if it keeps going up, or I'll look for a re-entry if it keeps going down and go back into it. So that's a possibility for ourselves as well. One person says, I want no exposure to Vic. So you know what? People are still looking at this, and they have a right to be looking at this. But,
welcome back, Cameron.
The last, thank you, Cameron, for that. The last post, and I want to get this in because I'm excited about it.
You don't have to do the drum roll, but
Yes, we do.
He did.
The Farm Bill. The Farm Bill was trending, still is. People are like, oh, you've been talking about this long enough. No, we're not talking about this long enough. Do you realize how big this is? Like, I'm so excited for this because this is what brought me into cannabis in the first place. Before I even got into Canopy or Bedrocan or any of them, was seeing hempcrete. And I don't, let me see if I can pull this up really quickly. I ran into an article today, we'll wait until I've got it on my screen here, that this is why I'm excited about it. Because a Dutch company, I've almost got it here. There we go, if you got my, my NDI up. A Dutch company just released the world's first prefab house built entirely of cannabis. This has a negative carbon footprint. This is grown in stalks that can grow 2 to 3 crops a year. This is flame retardant. The hempcrete is your insulation, your vapor barrier. Yep. It has, as I said earlier, a negative carbon footprint. It actually gets stronger with age, and this is all a natural product, and now it's in a prefab building form. This is going to be massive, folks. This is going to be huge. This is the very beginning of what we're going to see hemp doing. If you're not excited about that hemp bill going, and America, the greatest economy in the fucking world, if you're not happy about that, then you don't understand the opportunity in front of you.
Wow, he is fired up.
So the hemp bill's big news, folks, as I yell into my microphone. On that note, we're switching over to a cannabis company. We were able to speak to Melinda Rombout, CEO of Evenco earlier. A lot of we actually turned to Facebook groups. We turned to their Evenco Facebook group and our investors group, asking what questions do you have for the CEO that you're invested in. Absolutely, I asked them.
You asked the hard questions?
We asked the hard questions. The questions that came, I asked, I promise, and those answers to those questions are right here. And we're joined here today with Melinda Rombout, CEO of Evenco. How are you today?
Good, and how are you?
I'm doing well. You know, there's a good New Year's, but now it's on to 2019, so it's a lot ahead of us, as I can imagine you're faced with over the last couple of days, but going into 2019 as well.
Yeah, as always, going full tilt and really excited with the new edibles regulations coming through. So that's really exciting for us and the Eve brand. So we're really looking forward to 2019.
Yeah, and before we touch about edibles, I just want to quickly touch on a couple of developments that have happened recently since the last time you came on our show, and that was what a lot of investors were waiting to see. The sales license amendment going through, but also you've now done your shipment of clones and shipment of dried cannabis. How are those first steps in the clones and dried cannabis shipments?
So clones have been interesting. We have a unique packaging that really makes it affordable for us to package. So the actual packaging material is kind of unique. It comes out of the greenhouse industry, and so that way, really to ship about 4, the packaging materials themselves are only a couple dollars as compared to some of the other options out there that is, quite a bit higher per plant. So yeah, it's about, I think it works out to be about $2 or $3 for 4 plants just for the packaging material. So we can ship out product a lot cheaper. I think it's been really good. It's been very steady as far as the clone shipments. One thing that we're working with Newfoundlanders right now is I'm not sure that people were aware that it costs the same to ship 1 as 4. So we're really hoping that we can update our friends over in Newfoundland and get them to know that, because that definitely improves the cost per plant. And yeah, we made our some big shipments of dried trim and bud. And so that went out basically over the holidays. So as you know, we got our license December 10th to ship to the provinces. So right now we're working with all of the provinces and getting those purchase orders so that we can start shipping to the provinces. So Newfoundland right now, we are ready to kind of finalize some of the numbers for them and get those out. And then next, of course, would be Ontario.
Yeah, and leading right into my next question actually is getting into the stores for Ontario and BC and other provinces. Is that going to be happening in Q1, or is it going to be in Q2, or is that where are we at with getting those into so that all investors or consumers can start purchasing some flower from Eve & Co?
Sure. So Ontario, definitely Newfoundland and Ontario will be very, very shortly. So Newfoundland, we're hoping to get on a call with them today. The OCS actually comes and visits us this week so that we can just finalize some of our numbers and start shipping out that way. We've got purchase orders coming in from the private stores. So yeah, we're really excited. So Newfoundland and Ontario definitely, hopefully this week, if not next week. And then BC, of course, will be our next province that we're heading to.
Hey, and that's great to hear. So as you know, we always turn to our community for questions. We turn to different groups across all social media and asking investors what questions they have. And a lot of them centered around your facility. As you can imagine, people are curious about the progress in your phase 2 of your facility. But also there was a question, so it's kind of a two-part, where they're asking, is it fully funded? And if not, what type of avenues are you looking to for financing the rest of your phase 2 construction?
Right. So I think when originally we had hoped that we could finance most of it through sales. Now, one of the things that's really hurt us is that our flowering room number 2 was ready in July, but it just got licensed in December. So that really threw off our numbers, which is really disappointing. But moving forward, yeah, we're looking at different debt options right now. Well, debt is definitely my preferred choice. As you know, I'm still a larger shareholder, and we've always been against further dilution. But of course, we're looking at a number of options. But right now, we do have a very promising avenue with a local bank. So that's what we're really focusing and really hope to. It's a previous relationship, so we're hoping to move forward with them. And so we're very excited about that. It just opens up the possibilities. And, you know, there's so many different opportunities when it comes to this industry as far as, you know, what's happening for export, our brand. So this is where, you know, having a little bit more cushion is also going to help us. So it's really looking after not only the expansion to make sure that we can keep that all up and on time, but also looking at other opportunities that we may need funds for.
Absolutely, and specifically talking about the facility in itself, how are you coming along with phase 2? And for investors who may not know, in 2019, what is your forecast kilograms per year that you'll be able to complete once this next phase is up and running? And what do you have currently running, actually?
Sure. So, like I said, flowering room number 2 was open. So right now we're sitting at 220,000 square feet. It is sitting right now. By the end of January, it'll be in full production. So we should have full harvest starting in March. So pretty excited about that. It's definitely definitely a lot of more work for our team, but they're really getting together and really making this work. And then phase 2, we had to get a lot of stuff done before it started freezing. So we worked with our municipality really closely to make sure that we had everything in place so that we could get moving on that phase really quickly. So all the stump posts were put in. I think that there were some pictures posted by our marketing team on Facebook and some of the other social media as far as some of the other buildings. So right now the builder is focused on there's going to be a hot water tank. It's part of the heating system, so they're working on that. They're working on the boiler system in the room for the boiler system, and then also our irrigation is going in. So they're basically doing all the groundwork. All the material is here and ready to go. So we're just crossing our fingers to make sure that the weather you know, works with us and so that we could keep going. But construction is still happening every day. It's really moving ahead. So like I said, we're still, all the building material is here, just ready to be up and going. So our plan is, right now it looks like we should be ready. The entire building should be up by the summer, and then with first harvest in the fall. So right now we're sitting at about, we are looking at about 5,000 kilograms over the year with the 220,000, and then we'll be going up to 50,000 kilograms per year. And I'm just talking, we measure that in bud. I know that you see a lot of times it's 100,000 kilograms per year. We stay very conservative numbers. Like we're not going to exaggerate our numbers. We're really hoping that eventually, once we're up full in production, that we're really going to blow away our shareholders with what we're able to achieve. So I think with bud and trim, we definitely will be getting close to that 80 or 90,000. But if we hit the yields that we've been hitting lately, I believe that we should be able to easily surpass, and impress our shareholders with the production numbers that are coming out.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's good to hear. And a lot of people were asking that specifically because one thing that I've noticed on my end, just looking at social media and talking to investors, they're getting much smarter. They're looking for companies that are able to provide this information, but provided a competitive advantage, because there's so many different players out there. Where I think this year, in 2019, you're really going to start seeing the quality companies who are executing really start to break away from those who had just a lot of empty promises. So I appreciate you letting us know a little bit of that information. But off the top of the head, by any chance, do you know what you're aiming for your cost per gram moving forward, or even currently at this time?
Sure. So we used to always say it was sitting around $1.21. We've had a lot of costs, like putting into the greenhouses, just basically upgrading. And it's so funny, exactly what you said, that there's not really a standard right now for what you include in cost of production. So you're kind of all over the place. We remain conservative. So I think right now we are aiming for $1.35, but I think there's a lot of costs, and especially since we were not in full production, right? So we didn't have that room approved for about 6 months, which really kind of, but we are aiming for hitting under that dollar. So as a greenhouse, I think that's very doable. You're seeing a lot of other LPs coming out with those kind of numbers. So we're aiming for under the dollar, $1 per gram.
Very nice. And yeah, there isn't a specific cost per gram, finding out what exactly that is. There's no formula that everyone's abiding by. There are some people where I see they're showing 60 cents, and then other people are showing $1.70. I'm thinking that the $1.70 people are telling a little bit more truth than the 60 cents. So I'm hoping that comes together and we start having a factual, this is the formula, so that we can compare one to another. But even getting closer to dollar, under dollar, that's where you want to be. So that's good to hear.
Again, our CFO, he's very conservative. He always wants to put out the truest numbers possible. So I find that he'll include some costs that other LPs aren't including. But it's more than fair, and we want to be able to always put out true and accurate numbers.
Perfect. Now, switching gears here, at the very beginning of our interview, we were talking about edibles. I said just one moment, because we're going to go over, just updates and the facility and how we're getting there. But that's an area that really can prove to be a differentiator for yourself. And in the case of tropical creams and different edibles and all those different things, we know that now in October of this year, we're going to start getting the first bits of that legalization coming through, so you can start having that. How excited are you for that market, and how is the research and development going in that market for investors to be excited when it finally gets to be allowed in October of this year?
Right. So we're doing our research now. As a natural product, there has to be a certain amount of testing done for Health Canada, even separately from it being a cannabis product. So we are in that stage right now. So we're working with a number of groups who have already done a lot of work in the natural food and cosmetic industry. So they're up and going and running like mad to kind of catch up and make sure that we are ready for that time. So as you know, we're working on 6 different lines. Of course, your edibles, beverages, your creams and cosmetics. We're also playing with, we like the pet line. So Yeah, and we saw a lot of success in Colorado with that. And then sensual products and female sanitation products. So we're working with groups that have already done the work. Like really, we only have about a year to do this. So coming up with our own formulations doesn't make sense. So we're working with those groups that have already done the work, kind of finalizing it using our product. And we want to have basically, for each of these lines, we want to be able to have at least one product out. And then we'll have, we're working on so many things in the background, and we'll continue to work on products and add those products to each of our lines.
Yeah, I actually find that it's interesting that you say that. I like that, about going with partners, getting strategic alliances with people who have already done these types of products. So it's not like you're trying to create, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel or create your own wheel. Instead, you are using the fact that you're going to be having cannabis and CBD and those types of products and helping infuse these products. It makes that much more streamlined, and there's a little bit less room for error when you're working with people who they've done it before.
Oh, exactly. I mean, we only have a year to get this all together. It's not enough time for you to just start from ground zero. So, we're trying to leaps and bounds, make sure that we are well prepared for October of 2019.
Absolutely. And then lastly, we've spoken about your current facility. We've spoken about the derivatives that are coming up and your past successes in different areas that you were waiting for. But what about abroad? A lot of people talk about when you're thinking of a Canadian company, you were thinking about the fact that we can export, unlike the United States that was currently, they're only allowed being state to state, and even that's pretty hard. But when it comes to different opportunities abroad, where's your focus right now, and is there anything coming down the pipeline in that area?
Yeah, for sure. So there was 3 original companies that we've been working with for probably close to a year. So we're really hoping to start exporting very shortly, if not this month, next month. And we are contacted by companies like this on a weekly basis, that there's so much opportunity in the European market. So we're really, we're working with these groups. We're focused on the original 3 that we've set up these partnerships with. But then there's so many other opportunities. So I think that, it's definitely a balance, because we're really working on being long-term players. So, there's our product line, which there's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement about, and we want to make sure that we get into as many provinces as possible with our products and our Eve brand. But then there's also so many opportunities in Europe, which will be mostly the medical side, right? So Eve will be focused on the Canadian market and the recreational and the Eve brand and all the exciting products coming up there. Natural Medco still remains our medical brand, and those products will be exported to Germany and hopefully throughout Europe. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear more about that as that starts to come to fruition. And then just to finalize our interview, and thank you for always coming on and answering all these questions for myself, but more importantly from all the investors who are currently investors of Evenco. But one area, obviously the last little while, the cannabis sector has been following, well, really all North American markets, and a lot of these valuations are down quite significantly. When it comes to Evenco and going into 2019, what are you going to be doing to increase shareholder value through, mergers, acquisitions, through getting more products online, exports? What do you feel are going to be the main catalysts for increasing shareholder value going into 2019, or now actually in 2019?
Right. I think that, there's been, there are the early LPs were really able to establish themselves, and, we were license number 34, which is early, but not as early as some of the originals. And I think what's really going to make a difference for us is to prove to shareholders how we can produce. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get the provincial license until December, and that we had to shift to working with some of the LPs. But I think that with the next quarter, and we come out with our numbers, we can show, like right now, with that 1 million square feet coming up, even with the 220,000 square feet that we have, I think that there's we're not being looked at based on the amount that we can actually produce. And I think that's something that, you know, I'm hoping that shareholders will recognize, especially after the next quarter, once we can show that, you know, we have some major sales, we have some major production going on here. And I think that's what maybe that they're waiting for, is that we have to show that we're really a player in this, not only because of our size, but because of our brand and what we'll be able to do with that. So I think for us, it's a little bit of time just to prove to people what we're trying to do and what we're capable of.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what people are looking for in 2019. You know, we've gone the last several years where speculation has really driven share price and just in general has really driven this market, where this is starting to come into the year now. I've always been saying Q3, Q4 is when it's really going to begin, where it's show me the numbers. So looking forward to that coming soon. But thank you very much for coming on the show. Always appreciate your time. And good luck with everything in 2019. We'll have you on the show again in the near future to go over a little progress report of how the year's gone.
Yeah, that's great. Really appreciate it.
Take care now. And thank you very much for that, Melinda. I appreciate it. That was actually very, very short notice as well, where we had a lot of people asking questions in the Even Co Facebook group and in our chat rooms as well. So we shot out an email, let them know the questions and what investors wanted to know, and there she is answering your questions. So I hope that was what everyone was looking for. As the cameras keep going from one to the other, it's hard to pay attention. There we go. That was well done. Well played.
The synergies there between you and the room were pretty good.
That
but you know what?
Well.
I think that best highlights sort of the value here, right? So yeah, these guys and women are in a Facebook group, the Eve Facebook group, and they had questions. We told them yesterday, hey, we're going to have your CEO on tomorrow. What do you want to ask? And you asked some of their questions.
Yeah. I'm still laughing. That was good.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Double-digit movers. It is on fire. I'm going to do this as fast as I can here.
TGIF.
The double digits, so at least double-digit movers. You've got Namaste, you've got MMJ up almost 30%, you've got OGI 13%, you've got Agra 13%, Even Co, who just saw her, it's almost up 17%, DNAX 15%, TGOD 15%, Prevceuticals 30%, look at the Form 9s. You've got JWCA, James E. Wagner, up 11.4%, switching over to US. Double-digit movers, you got Golden Leaf Holdings up 22%, 1933 Industries up 10%, Vivita up 11%. Body and Mind, they were beaten down from not getting those Nevada licenses, but they're coming back. How much volume have they got? 130,000? Not too much, but they're up 30%. TerraTech, 14%, watch out for them. There's just a lot of stuff going on there. 12% is for crop. YOLO is like 12%. And then the one we can't figure out because we've been doing the show and we haven't been looking at it, I do not really know why, but Dixie is down 14% when everyone else is ripping.
If you're red on a day like this, especially when everybody can hit the refill button on their TFSA and the tax loss is over, there's a problem. You want to check out what's coming out on the market. And yeah, so I think the reason why you're seeing this is people are able to put some more into their TFSA. So I think you see retail doing that. Also, yeah, cheers to anybody who was in there bargain hunting into the tax loss, especially the end of the tax loss dummies. And the sector is coming down and markets are coming down. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for those Americans who are watching right now, what's a TFSA? Tax-free savings account. Essentially, you get an allocation each year that you're allowed putting it in. This year is $6,000 extra. That's definitely accounting to something because people have been waiting to refill that. But also, like you said, I think even bigger is the fact that we were so oversold from tax loss selling. You had the CPTPP that was signed. That's a big vote of confidence in the markets, and just in general, people are seeing this fear, this FOMO, and then people are like, I want to be a part of it. Just watch out when things are ripping a lot.
January last year was a blow off top, and
that's because December was so good.
Yeah, like if I can go back and do last January over again, oh boy.
Yeah, right.
Would have done things, but last January was huge. It was just massive. But that was a global thing. That was a little bit of a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Nick Dushko is asking, why did you say watch out for TerraTech? and that's because there were allegations out against them about fraud and things like that. They're allegations, you have to remember that. They're not facts as of yet. So just be careful, be mindful, look into them a little bit more. They did a reverse split a while ago. They were like $4 as the reverse split, come down like 60, 70 cents. So just a couple things there. I've always just been wanting to watch out for that one. And yeah, don't FOMO in, a few people are saying, and I agree. Be patient.
Yeah,
you know, if you're up 20%, it might not be the day to
It's not so much now, but even though I don't own it and I'm not I don't really care about Matica right now, that stock came down to a point where it was like, okay, it was getting hammered for tax loss. You know what I'm saying? People were using it as that type of vehicle. And I think people looked at that and go, I'll nibble on that.
Yeah. And one thing we were going to touch on really quickly, actually, switching back to Evenco, you want to touch on MCAP and why it's important, because their share price has been beaten up over the last couple of months. Well, and you had a pretty good theory, which we've all been talking about for months, though.
Right. So I'm in that Evenco group, and I read comments, and I see people are a little frustrated, and I think you just have to understand the why. Why are things happening right now? You have you have this fund who has a lot of shares, who can literally blow them out at any point of profit and sit on risk-free warrants, and essentially that's a really smart way of doing it, regardless of how tunnel vision you are and focused on your stock. Really a fund like that, you take your capital, you plant seeds, you get into these financings, you pull in your profit, and you sit on warrants. And so Johnny Mac would be a great person to run through the financials and to look at the trading of Eve, and I think it would reflect that this fund is soaking up all of the buying.
Yeah.
But again, this is not advice, but if you understand why this is happening right now, and you are bullish on this company, is that a buying opportunity for you? I'm not telling you to buy, but if you can understand the why and you're bullish, maybe you might want to be, because when they're done blowing that out, where's your upside?
Yeah. And I wanted to show something really quickly as well, because on that same note, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but just something that I personally did myself. I think you did as well.
Yeah, Greg, we were talking about that.
If you can go to my my NDI really quickly in the studio, I want to show a chart of MPX. MPX Bioceuticals. Many people probably know who they are, but at this point right here, you'll see that you'll see this really big drop off right here, and it went down to around 40 cents. And Alan Broxine actually did a really good job of telling people that this was a guy, I believe his name was, I had it written down here, his name was Remy or something like that, or something along those lines, but the name is irrelevant. It was an investor where that investor had millions and millions of shares, like 50 million shares. And he had unloaded upwards of 25 million shares during this time on the chart. If we get the chart back really quickly. And we knew that. It doesn't matter why he was doing that. He was in there, he's from Dubai, probably a lot of money, and he's just selling, right? I think he had warrants as well, so it could be for risk-free, but we knew why it was happening. You asked yourself, did any material change that was negative happen to the company? Yeah. Do you still believe in the company?
Well, do you have a marker? Because look at what happened
when he stopped.
Look what happened when
if you go back there, my apologies, guys.
And the thing is,
it stopped here, and then look at this jump up there from that. And I sold around $1, so I went from 40 cents to $1 in a matter of
investors and
weeks.
Traders look at the financing. You see what's happening in there on the market. You understand that all the buying is being soaked up by this one person, and what's going to happen when that guy's done.
Yeah,
that's what you say. And then, obviously went into overbought territory, right?
Oh yeah.
But these are the things that you got to do. So when you're, as much as I love social media, there's a lot of vultures out there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of misinformation. You need to get involved with people that you can trust, that can help you out with where you're weak, like understanding financials. Even I'm not that good at it, but I have friends that I trust. I can ask questions. Yeah. Figure this stuff out. Don't just get frustrated. Understand what's going on, and that'll allow you to be confident and even maybe more bullish. And then you go, oh, that's why that's happening right now.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's why investing with friends and community and people who all have their different strengths and different areas of opportunities, that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And his name, by the way, was Nasser bin Booty Elm Harry. Forgive me, as
we'll just call him Bin Booty
a little bit. But that's who it was. I knew about it. That's how I was able to get over a double bagger just from playing it. But on that note, We are switching over to the last interview of the show before we switch over to Johnny Mack, who's going to be breaking down Wayland, Aurora, and Hexo. He's going through all the charts there. So we're going to go over to Greg Johnson, CEO of Metallic Minerals, as he tells us a recap of what they were doing in 2018. Well, Greg, I'd like to take a moment now to specifically speak about Metallic Minerals. As you are the CEO, you're the head of the company and really the brains behind a lot of what's going on there. You've been able to put together a major land package in the Keno District, which is right next to one of the largest silver mines currently in operation. What has happened in the year 2018? What are the different milestones that you were able to reach? And can you give us a little bit of an overview of what Metallic Minerals is?
Yeah, so Metallic Minerals is this is our second year, so we're the most advanced of the three metallic group companies. Over the last 2 years, actually, we've gone from a process of consolidating a major land position in one of the highest grade silver producing districts, the Keno Hill Silver District in the Yukon, to starting to develop targets, to advance some of those targets towards early resource delineation, and to start to refine and advance targets towards drill testing here in 2018 and then moving into 2019. So it's been an exciting period of growth for the company as we've gone from this initial acquisition focused period to this target development and testing period where we are now at 166 square kilometers next to Alexco with 10 of the 12 major structures that control mineralization in the district. This is really a very exciting exploration opportunity. And with the results that we've seen to date, we've seen strong encouragement that we've got the same type of geologic setting as we see next door in the more developed side of the district. Our model here with Metallic Minerals is that we think the Keno District has the potential to be really a world-class silver district. And by that, we see the opportunity for a 1 billion+ ounce type district with further exploration. Amazingly, the Keno District so far has only seen quite shallow exploration, quite shallow mining depths. And so the opportunity to be able to explore along trend and deeper is where we see this opportunity to be able to potentially find new discoveries. Recently, our neighbor Alexco has made a major new discovery, the Birmingham silver deposit, which is probably one of the best quality silver discoveries in the industry right now in terms of grade and quality. And what's exciting for us is when you see that level of discovery in a mature district, it really is an indication there's a lot more to be found in this district and excellent potential for creating value through exploration.
Absolutely. And heading into 2019, are we still having results that are going to be coming out early 2019? And what do you think is in store for your company next year?
Yeah, we've been providing pretty regular updates about once a month on the various projects. But coming into early next year, we see a series of important news releases. Final results coming out of the McKay Silver Project, where we delineated several new major soil and rock anomalies this year. So pretty exciting outcome for that earlier stage project. And final results coming out of our Keno Silver Project in terms of targeting and drill testing of some of those early resource delineation targets on that project here over the next couple of months. So it should be a good season for us that way. In addition, we made really good progress on building our gold royalty portfolio. We now have 4 major land packages under operational lease for royalty production. And we are starting to advance on permitting on as many as 6 additional properties. So building on that business as well as we start to bring those projects forward.
And thank you, Greg. I appreciate you going through that because the Metallic Minerals is one of 3 groups that make up the metallic group of different metals and different land packages as well. And thank you for that, Greg. As we were saying earlier, I have, both of us actually, have had a lot of time speaking with Greg Johnson because he not only talks about his company, but just in general, his experience throughout the last 3 decades of working in the space. I like it because I like to talk to people who are smarter than me in their own ways.
Don't steal my lines, Brandon.
But I wanted to.
That was his line.
Why'd you have to point out that I stole it from you? Come on, man. But no, I appreciate it. Lots of different things to be looking into in the mining and exploration world. As we said earlier, there's a lot of these precious metals have been beaten down, and if we do start going into recession, which is there's some rumors that in January Canada is going to announce that it is in a recession, which isn't this crazy, oh my goodness, we're all going to die. A recession simply means you had 2 quarters of contracting GDP in a row. That's normal. You look for a soft landing. You get your interest rates back to where you wanted to. Bob's your uncle. It was all planned. So don't freak out.
Where's Johnny Mac?
Johnny Mac is coming on the show now. If we can get the World Wide Web to bring him over and put a screenshot up so that we can start breaking down these companies that our investors voted on. Johnny, how you doing?
Good, guys. Happy New Year to y'all.
Happy New Year to yourself.
Happy New Year.
Do you want to just break right into it then, guys, or?
Oh yeah, we've been waiting. Let's jump right in. You got the magic, my man. You pick which one you're going to do first. Maybe whatever the #1 stock was. Let's jump right in.
Okay. Just quick comment. Nice, interesting day on the markets. Finally, an up day for the venture, almost up 2%. So outperforming a lot of the under indices. So that's kind of a nice change to see. Anyway, we'll start with Wayland Group. Guys, just before I get too detailed, I'm getting some bad feedback from you on my voice.
Okay. We'll affect it here. Thank you.
Okay. So this one seems to be a very popular choice. It keeps coming up, so obviously a lot of people are in it. I've kind of covered it a couple times. My opinion on it hasn't really changed, and I think the very first time I covered it, I said the stock really had a lot of work to do in order to get things on a better foot, and that has not happened. So you can see here just continuously it cannot hold these bottoms that it's forming, so we're continuing to get these declining bottoms, lower lows, however you want to call it. I did reference before, I think the last time we talked about it, I was looking at this zone here roughly between $1.15 and $1.05 as a very critical support. And we're getting that by looking back in time. That was basically our all-time low. We set that back in the fall of 2017. So that would be the natural point to say, okay, your all-time low should give you support. And anytime we were getting into that area in late November, we were bouncing. We bounced out of it. We got back there again in early December. We bounced out of it. The problem is that subsequent to that, around mid-December, the stock broke below that. So we've broken below a very critical support level, and TA 101 broken support becomes resistance and vice versa. So an area that we would expect it to have provided support before, because we're below it now, it's acting as resistance. And we can see we dipped down to about 87, so into the high 80s, and when it rebounded, look where we ended up, right into that zone, and we bounced back down. So I mean, this one has a lot of work to do. It has to convince us that the buyers are able to hold a low. So right now the key low to hold is the all-time low, which is about 87 cents. So the high 80s are basically where we'd be looking at support. And step one is that low has to hold, and you can see this whole trend down that the lows have not been holding. We continue to set lower lows. So that's step one is just put in a higher low somehow and then use that to pivot up. We did have some positive divergence with RSI, even though we were setting lower lows, lower highs, and the price action we were getting the opposite in RSI, but it never really materialized. And one reason I was suspicious of it is because our trend following indicator, because this is a trending market, the PPO was not sort of confirming the same behavior. So let's sort of zoom in. That's sort of the bigger picture view. Zoom in here. So I've identified this is the old support area that's now resistance. So this would be the area, I think, very important for the stock to reclaim that as support and get back above it. Right now, I mean, it's up today. As of writing, I guess it would be up about 3.25%. So yeah, it's up 3.25%, but it's actually underperforming the sector. As you know, the sector is up as a whole today. There's a lot of companies up high single digits, several up double digits. So as a whole, Wayland is actually underperforming the sector. So that's another danger sign. You know, you have a stock that's basically trading near all-time lows. It's recently set a new all-time low, and it's even on a green day, it's underperforming. So you know, I know there were a lot of people buying the stock in this whole area, thinking, you know, it's so low, it can't get any lower, and that's the problem. Especially when you break below an all-time low, which we have, is there's no price action below this 87 cents. Or there's no historical price action for which we can kind of look back and say, okay, where are we going to find support next? Basically, 87 cents is it. And if the price were to turn down and break below that, then, you know, it's anybody's guess about how hard it's going to fall or how much lower it has to go. So obviously, from a fundamental standpoint, if you were buying it here and you thought it was cheap, you probably might be buying it here and thinking it's cheap as well. But to me, in my own personal preference, I wouldn't be trying to find a bottom. It's called trying to catch a falling knife. You never know how low it's going to go. So I think, to me, it's important that it regains this trend. You can might not be obvious on your screens, but the 20-day moving average is sitting right in this zone as well at $1.07. So there's not only the price resistance, but the moving average resistance is there. So it's got some work to do. If it can push above this area, I would expect it to pull back and retest that area and try and confirm that support that the bulls have taken back control of this zone. So that would be an important step. I think in the intermediate term, the short term, it really needs to hold this low. So it needs to push back up and prove that, you know, it's not going to keep setting new all-time lows. And we're actually in an equilibrium pattern here. So we had our low here, rebound, we set a higher low, and there was a reactionary lower high, higher low here as well. So we're in this sort of equilibrium pattern, but I think even if we were to break the most recent high, which is $1.04, that still puts us well into this resistance zone between $1.05 and $1.15. So I think, from, you know, if you're looking at it from a longer term perspective, it's this area, getting back above it, pivoting it back to support is very critical. So we'll see if this area holds. Maybe it bounces a little bit in between these two support zones. I mean, there's some room for traders to play in here, but if you're investing long, the less risky strategy, rather than trying to get lucky and catch the absolute bottom, is to wait until the bulls have shown some sort of strength and regained at least this old support level. That's how I would play it myself. So that's my take on Wayland. You know, long story short, lots of work to do on that one from a chart standpoint anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things, right? That's when you take fundamentals and TA and you're trying to figure out, you know, what's the best route to take, because from a TA's perspective, just like you said there, you know, there's a lot of issues with the chart from a fundamental standpoint. That's where I always look at it, and that's why I'm still a holder. I see all the upside that's there, but I'm also well aware of the TA as well. So, you know, you got to make decisions. And like you said, are you catching a falling knife, or are you at a point now where it could be a lot of upside coming out of this as well? It's a decision you need to make on your own, but take all the facts in together and helps you make hopefully a better decision.
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. And the real distinguishing feature, I mean, if this was a different stock and we had price action below this level in the past to look, and you say, okay, there's a real fundamental case here as a buy. And then you maybe had like a support area or previous price action at, you know, 75 cents or something. You know, you could make a risk reward decision at that point based on that, but we just don't have anything here. All we have is this all-time low that we've set at 87 in mid-December, and that's all you have to go on. If you break that and you start breaking below, then you really have no idea how low it's going to go. And, you know, a lot of people that are fundamentally driven only tend to think, well, it can't possibly go much lower. But I bet you there was a lot of people saying that back up here at $1.60.
Yeah.
You know, and look where we are now. You know, you've almost lost 50% from there. So that's the danger, that and that's the problem with you know, when you're buying something that doesn't have that price history. So changing gears here to Aurora Cannabis. When I look at a chart, I like to try and zoom out a bit and see if I can find any critical historical levels. So I've kind of focused in on a level around $7 to about $7.25. I've identified it here in green. It's basically a previous resistance level on this push in mid-November. We had this equilibrium pattern here where we had another push in late November. You can see the range tightening up. So anytime the range starts to get tight, the balance between demand and supply is getting closer and closer together. And notice we had quite a push off out of this area. I mean, the volume absolutely exploded. We had a huge move up. Basically almost a double from, or no, it would be more than a double from where it pushed. So we know that we went from a condition where supply and demand was very tight to a condition where, at this certain price level anyway, buyers were very dominant. So if we look back in history, look at all the bounces we've seen out of that area, and you know, we did lose that area in the summer, and it pivoted back down off that as a resistance. But ever since we regained it, again, we've had a couple rebounds off that level. So for whatever reason, you know, it seems to be significant. So we lost it temporarily here in early December, but a quick move up, and we actually gapped up back above that support. So the problem that we're coming into now is we've fallen below. We've rebounded, and this area looks like it's testing and acting as a resistance zone, and that's potentially concerning. That, you know, has this area, which for whatever reason is significant, has potentially you know, transitioned into a resistance area. So that's one thing I'm watching. You know, we had lots of distribution here. Look at the volume, but on this pullback, the volume has been dropping off. So in that sense, that's a good thing. If we zoom in a little bit to a tighter time period. So here's that zone again. So I have my eyes on this area. The 20-day moving average is right at the top. The 20 days sitting at 724. So that's obviously a resistance. You have this price area as a resistance. Your immediate term support are, we had a nice double bottom at about 621, 623, 621. So this made a slightly higher low than here, but basically call it the same thing. I just call it a double bottom. So I'm watching, you know, if it can break above basically the 725 area. The high we set here on last Friday was 722. Again, the 20 days at 724, 725. So if we can get back above there, I see that as a very good sign. And then I would be looking for it to probably set a lower high than here. Certainly, you have the 50-day falling 50-day moving average. I'd expect would be resistance. So some sort of low high to be set in here if it does get above, and then I would expect a retest of this level to happen. If for whatever reason it can't get through, it is a nice candle today. It's a piercing candle. You can see we actually opened below the low of yesterday. I suspect this probably faked out a lot of traders because we took out the lows of the previous 2 days, but then the buyers have showed up. So it is a piercing candle. We are well past the halfway point of Monday's candle, and we started out low. So that's good. So, you know, the sellers did try and push this down early on, and the buyers sort of rejected it. You know, now it's time to see if they can follow through and push back above. And if for whatever reason they can't, then you have a $1 range here. It's a fairly wide range where the price might end up bouncing around before it decides to pick a different direction. If for whatever reason, you know, this curls over and we lose this support level from this double bottom, I would be looking back to this August low around 530 area as the next area of strong support. So, you know, if you're a bull, you'd be hoping to see that this double bottom area continues to hold as support, and eventually we can get some sort of pivot. Right now, just basically trying to put in, you know, confirm basically a higher low is formed and pivot off that. Notice on these rebounds, I did circle this. I've mentioned this a few times in other stocks that on the rebounds we're staying in bear sort of territory where the bears are in control. So in this instance, we're not really getting above the 50% mark on RSI. So anything above 50% is considered, bullish or sort of positive momentum. But anything 60 and under, basically, if the bears are in control, that's where you'd expect the price to stay. And you can see on the last two rebound attempts that the bears have maintained control. The rebound attempts have failed, and we haven't even got above that positive momentum territory. So that's worth noting.
Might I add, by the way, I love the zoom the feature. It's just zooming in right into so you can actually see that. So good on you for that. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no problem, Brandon. So let's switch gears again to Hexo. This is the weekly chart on Hexo. Really nice uptrend on this one for a long time, and now we're into a consolidation. If you do the Fibonacci retracements on this, I don't have them on the chart, just because they tend to clutter things. But this level that you hit in August, and again that we hit in late December, is basically a critical level because it corresponds roughly to the golden Fibonacci retracement. And that's kind of the deciding factor about whether this is just a retracement, in an overall uptrend, or is the trend going to completely reverse. From a price action standpoint, we have reversed the weekly trend. We are putting in lower lows here and lower highs. So, the chart has to turn that around. You can see that here the 50-week moving average was acting as support because we were above. So when we came down to it, we would expect we would get support. It did push off. We've moved below that subsequently, and now that 50-week moving average is showing as resistance. And we're actually bouncing up against that today. This is a weekly chart, remember, but it's going to encompass today's action. So the action today is bouncing right up against that 50-week moving average. Looking back in time, same thing I did with Aurora. I just sort of highlighted an area that seemed to me there was, for whatever reason, tends to be a significant area. And it's, roughly speaking, $5 to about $5.50, maybe even $5.60, about a 10% range. So when it first moved up here, we got a rejection, pulled back, another push up, a rejection, pulled back. So we've had a couple significant or relatively significant pullbacks. And when it finally got above, again, old resistance becomes support. So you can see that that area has transitioned to a support area. We got a bounce off that when we came off our all-time high. Obviously, we set a lower high here, and then we ended up breaking the trend. We broke below this low, and we've not only did we break below the low, but we've lost that support area. So that previous support area now becomes resistance. So again, not surprised at all to see if the price were to come in here and reject downwards, because it's basically broken support and you now have it as resistance. So the key support resistance levels that I'm looking at, this zone here in the red, which we're into today, support, very strong support here, looking back towards the August low, roughly between $4 and $4.10. So, about the $4 level, give or take. I think this is a key level to hold. If the price can even start moving sideways here, that's a win, as opposed to, if for whatever reason this curls over and we move below this August low, then you're looking down to the low $3 range as your next support level, and you would definitely be in a reversal of this uptrend, and possibly a much more prolonged correction versus if it can hold and rebound. So nice movement on if we zoom in a little bit today. So that was the weekly zoom in on the daily. Really nice movement today. This is a bullish engulfing candle. You can see that this is our candle on Monday. It was red. So we did set a new high, but we did close below the previous day. The buyers did buy the dip a bit. So we opened lower than yesterday. Again, probably faked some people out because we had this bit of a tail, and then the buyers have kind of taken charge. So it's an engulfing candle because this candle is being completely engulfed by this one today. So that's good. The volume is decent. Overall, the price action is kind of in this sort of downtrending channel. You can see that we actually broke below it. This is almost like, because the stock is already downtrending here on a daily chart basis, and then we break below it. It's almost like it gets, the sellers get a little bit carried away. You can see we got oversold here, and the buyers quickly bought this dip. So we're running into this this angular resistance line. This line that I've driven here is sort of a pushback. And if you recall on the weekly chart, we're well into now the old support, which is now resistance zone, and we're also up against the 50-week moving average. But really nice move today on Hexo, double-digit gain. It did manage to get above the 20-day moving average, which is good. So this is quite a move. I would definitely expect things. If it's going to consolidate, which it might, because there's a number of resistances, as noted, that it's up against, I would definitely expect a higher low to form than here. And, maybe start form an equilibrium pattern. Let's see if it can pivot off that and move back up to sort of challenge this resistance area. So not only do we have that historical price resistance area, just take a note as well. Your 200-day and your 50-day are sitting right there in the blue and the red. So a number of key moving average resistances as well to overcome. But a very nice day on Hexo. It's leading the sector, which is good. I mean, one big day like this doesn't mean the trend's necessarily going to change around. It's still within this downtrend, keep in mind, but not a bad start. I think as the Chinese proverb goes, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So, this has been a nice bounce off of the August the support level. So not looking too bad, but definitely need to see some more follow through and more price action to confirm that the bulls are kind of taking charge. I think I did want to highlight here, this is the price momentum oscillator. It's the same family of indicators as the PPO and the MACD. Tends to be a little more conservative. So the one thing I did want to note is during this whole correction phase, when it's been down, the indicator has not been able to get above its signal line. You can see that a little more aggressive the PPO has. It's kind of moved above and below. So we haven't seen that except for today. We're actually getting a crossover today on this. So that's a good sign. That's assuming that this price level holds by the end of the day because it's based on the closing price. But that could be an indication that the bearish momentum is starting to fade out a bit. So the bears still have momentum. We're obviously still very negative here. We're quite a ways from zero, so we're still very negative momentum, but possibly decreasing bearish momentum, which is, again, it's a good place to start. RSI, we're right at 50, so we're still within that area where the bears are kind of traditionally in control. We'd have to get above 60% to really be confident on the RSI that the bulls are starting to flex their muscles a bit. So that's those three. I see we have a little bit of time left. I just wanted to point out, in previous shows we have talked about the venture index. Venture having a really nice day, and you might recall that I kind of flagged this area on the PPO as a traditional area of as an oversold bounce. You can see that we actually hit that, and we are bouncing off of that. RSI as well. So several bounces off roughly the same place on RSI, about 15%. And on the PPO at about -8. So we are starting to see a bit of a bounce off these oversold conditions. Sellers, bears, still very much in control of this exchange. I mean, this is a really negative reading. This is kind of like whaling. The venture has so much work to do to change things around. So I would view this bounce as sort of a short-term bounce. I did have the daily chart here. This was sort of the overall daily downtrend within this channel, and then we got this really sharp decline from mid-November on. So we've kind of broken out of that, so which is great. So we're out of that broken decline, but even if we move up significantly, it would still put us back into this daily downtrend on the venture. So there's still a lot of work to do. Even though we're getting this oversold bounce, don't kid yourselves, the venture has a lot of work to do. It's still still in what I would consider a troubled area, and especially if the overall markets, TSX, S&P 500, if they see some more red, that's not probably going to be good for the venture. So it'll be interesting to see, but at least it's not setting new 52-week lows like it has been pretty consistently for the last while.
Yeah, and if I can say as well, I know you're a very humble man, and I appreciate that very much. But let's go back to how, when we were talking about that the PPO, we took a moment to describe what PPO was, where it's very close to, I believe, it was MACDs that you were comparing it to. But how you were calling those 3 bounces, and I remember just shortly before the year ended, you were on here and you're saying these are the bounces and this is where they happened. I'm watching to see if that occurs again, and it turns out that today. What was signifying that's exactly actually what happened. We found another bounce, it hit those points in the PPO and the RSI, and here we are having a rebound day to start the year.
Yeah, it's just, that's the beauty of technical analysis. It can be, you know, predictive. If you look back at a point, that tends to give you support over, and not even just in price, but in some of these indicators as well. So this was, just for clarification, this is a weekly chart, so keep in mind. But yeah, we were looking at the weekly oversold conditions on the PPO, and we did get it sort of right on schedule. So we, you know, over the last week, we have seen that bounce on the daily chart, and having a very good day today, you know, up 2% almost.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, we always appreciate your time coming on here. A lot of people don't put enough emphasis on TA, on technical analysis. I think you should. I personally like to put it with fundamentals and have the two of them coincide. Some people just go just fundamentals or just TA, but I think when you have a good understanding of both, you've got a lot more tools to decide what the price action in that stock will be in the short run, medium run, and hopefully you can somehow figure out the long run.
Thanks, John. Thanks for joining, and hope you had a great holidays and a little bit of a break from the markets and got some family time in.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. I wanted to stay up till midnight last night. I was able to lift up my left foot, and that way I was able to start the year off on the right foot. So there you go.
All right, thanks, man. We'll tune in real soon. Appreciate it very much, Johnny. No, I love that, and it's so true. You've got to be able. You don't have to be a TA expert. You know, you ask any three of us, and we'll say we are not experts in TA. Yeah, but we're learning every day.
I've listened,
and you're growing, and you're adding these aspects. That's why we tell everyone watching the show and listening to the show. Yeah, you learn every day. Every day we get better. Every day we learn more. Stay connected, and listen to people like Johnny Mac and Karl over here with the bottle cap backwards.
I've listened to billionaires talk about just throw like TA out, like Eric Sprott's prime example. He just like laughs at it, you know. Yeah. Guy's filthy rich. He's got in super early and done very, very well. But I don't think for retailers, I don't think that's a good attitude to have. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like especially with social media, you can get in touch with good people, like I was saying, that you can trust and ask questions, and they'll take time to help you. Yeah. Because once you figure stuff out, some people just have a passion to help others, and I think there's a lot of that in our community in Follow the Money Investor Group. So if you haven't joined along. And understanding the financials and the TA can really help you trim your position, even if you're bullish. You know, maybe you want to take something off the table. Now is a good time to look at doing that based on the charts. So,
absolutely. Well, that is a wrap of our first show of the year. Coming up in just less than a half an hour, we've got the man himself, James and Sir Ed, coming on the show. We got a nice show coming up as well. So stay tuned. Go grab a coffee, relax. We'll be back on shortly with Midas Letter. See you next week.
Later.